tooth decay and gum disease. It's 98% of what I treat all day, every day. All about inflammation and a dysbiosis in the gut. Our bodies give us these messages. And before, when I was young and stupid and got sick, I didn't listen to the messages because I was taught just push harder, push through, work harder. I at least know that, hey, I'm about to be at my breaking point. I've got to rest this weekend. The mouth affects the gut affects the mouth because the mouth is the first part of the gut. Anything that's going to create inflammation is going to contribute to that disease process.
If you could have a standardized way where like they're using this mouthwash, they're using this type of toothpaste, like what would be that ideal routine?
So ideal routine for normal, healthy-ish people, I would say.
This is a topic we get asked about all the time. Today, we're talking all about a healthy oral microbiome. And this is something we get asked time and time again. So we brought in Dr. Toni Engram. She's a biological dentist all the way down in Texas. So we're up here in Canada. So if Chris and I could fly down to spend our winters with you, we absolutely would. We can trade dental microbiome and acne, and like we could just make a whole boutique of skin and oral health. So the reason why we're so excited is we get these questions from our clients all the time. Things like, what's the connection between our oral health and our gut health? If I have autoimmune disease, is there things I need to be considered? What about tongue tie? And the big old question, the fluoride debate. So we're breaking it all down today. Dr. Toni, thank you so much for hanging out.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay, we are so pumped. So let's just kind of break it down. So for people that aren't familiar with biological dentistry, what is it and how does it really differ from that awful drill and fill model that gives me severe dental anxiety?
Okay, we're going to start high level, but then I'll get down and I'll tell you what that actually means in like real people terms. So biological dentistry, it comes from like the principles of biological medicine. And in biological medicine, we are going beyond the germ theory of disease. And germ theory says one germ causes one illness, and therefore one substance can kill said germ and cure said illness. We're going beyond that to more of the terrain theory of disease. And in the terrain theory, which is something I've been looking at your content, this is all your jam. We've got to take care of the entire body. So what are we adding to the mouth that could either contribute to disease or contribute to health? What do we need to take away from the mouth that can either contribute to disease or contribute to health? So that's kind of the overlying principle. So in practice, that means I focus a lot on nutrition and prevention because a lot of times less dentistry is the best dentistry. And then we're also being really, really intentional with the materials that we use and the methods that we use. So we try to keep things more natural. We don't use any fluoride in the practice because of the neurotoxin risk and some other risks involved. Those old silver mercury fillings, we're really, really careful with how we remove those. Most people don't use them anymore, but even removing them can create some risk. And so we're really careful with that too. And then looking for some of these hidden infections. We basically just want to support the body healing as best we can because we know that the mouth is just intricately connected to the rest of your health in so many different ways.
100%. And what I've connected more and more as we keep doing this is when somebody has a gut dysbiosis, or if somebody has a night where they're waking up and they have gas and bloating, or they didn't feel so, or their stomach, they wake up and I'll say, how did your mouth feel? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, how do your gums feel? I want you to touch around. Do you have anything in there? Because it shouldn't hurt. And sure enough, the gums will be inflamed. Like donuts to dollars, I can guarantee that somewhere down that line, it's not the simple, like just stick out the tongue and we see the oral thrush and, the certain candidiasis and these types of things, because there's other things like H. pylori that go undetected. It hangs out in there, but it's just that type of level. So I'm like, okay, what are we dealing here? So yeah, I love how you say like even the oral microbiome, right? That constitutes as its own thing.
There's a lot of overlap between your oral microbiome and your gut microbiome and your skin microbiome, but the environment's very unique. And so the microbiome shifts and is very unique depending on the pH in your mouth, how acidic your saliva is or how neutral it is, if you're having any gut issues, like it goes both ways. The mouth affects the gut affects the mouth because the mouth is the first part of the gut.
I often do I call it like an oral hygiene routine with people. So if I'm doing a client intake and they're like, oh, I had a root canal or I had an extraction, I'm like, which one? I'm like, no, count with me. And I'll go through the quadrants. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's connected to this body. And I'm like, yes, queen, this is where we're going with this. And I love it, right?
We'll use a face mapping chart, and a lot of that comes from traditional Chinese medicine. So in biological dentistry, we use a tooth meridian chart. And just like you were saying, each in Chinese medicine or Ayurveda, in the ancient healing practices, each tooth was connected energetically to different organs and different systems in the body. So you're exactly right. And we use that as an adjunct to traditional screening and clinical tools. Like if an x-ray is not giving us an answer, if a CT is not giving us an answer, then we're looking at the tooth meridian chart. Like, okay, you've got this pain here, but it doesn't really match up. So what's going on with the organs that are connected to that? And we get into things that if a patient is struggling, let's say she's got a family history of breast cancer and she's got root canals on those maxillary molars, then it's another jumping point for another conversation. Like, okay, what are our risks? What can we do to support the health of your mouth so that the entire system and all those organs connected are as healthy as they can be?
But it's fascinating, right? The fact that these ancient healing modalities were able to figure out, like, how did they do this? How did they map out the face and map out the teeth with like thousands of years ago?
That's what I absolutely love about healthcare, and what I try to lovingly encourage my colleagues to remember is just how little we know. Eastern medicine has had a lot of this stuff figured out for a couple of millennia, and now we're as great as Western medicine is, like the evidence-based, the peer-reviewed research, it's just slowly trying to catch up a little bit. And we know nothing. We know nothing. Nothing. So it's very humbling. And I will never be done none of us will ever be done learning.
Because you actually went back and got your integrative health coaching certification as well, aside from being a dentist. So I love that you were really able to bring in that holistic integrative health approach.
Yeah, I've always been interested in nutrition. And then when I myself got sick and wanted to kind of shift the practice a little bit, I was talking to my patients more about nutrition. I was like, I really need a little bit of street cred.
It works out great though, because for you, this was really driven by getting diagnosed with an autoimmune condition.
100% was. And what we do, I think, is actually so similar because it is all connected, even in my own body. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's colitis back in 2011. It really was the catalyst, just the best gift was the catalyst that completely shifted my career. I probably would not be practicing anymore because that old model, I was burnt out and it was so discouraging. But learning about Crohn's disease and learning how to heal my own gut, I was like, man, every new nugget I would learn, I would just start connecting. Okay, it's actually the same thing as what's going on in our mouths. Like Crohn's disease, these autoimmune conditions, it's all about inflammation and a dysbiosis in the gut. Tooth decay and gum disease, it's 98% of what I treat all day, every day. All about inflammation and a dysbiosis in the gut. And then same thing with the skin. Skin, it's all about inflammation. And so much of it is also a dysbiosis in the gut. Our bodies give us these messages. And before, when I was young and stupid and got sick, I didn't listen to the messages because I was taught just push harder, push through, work harder. But if we listen, now I know I'm old enough and maybe a tiny bit smarter, not much, but I at least know that, hey, I'm about to be at my breaking point. I've got to rest this weekend.
Now, I find that connection between oral and gut microbiome so fascinating. So, from that dental perspective, are you finding similar bacteria in the mouth that you're finding in the gut and vice versa?
Yes. And it is more and more common the more I test my patients. So we do a salivary test that looks for over 700 different species of bacteria and candida and all kinds of things, good and bad. And we are seeing just this incredible uptick in Fusobacteria nucleatum, that specific strain of bacteria. It's a gum disease causing bacteria, but it is also very strongly correlated with inflammatory bowel disease. So we'll see it. I saw it on myself right before like a little mini flare up. I saw that strain in my saliva increase, and I see it more and more with patients.
And so when you see this with your patients, do you have like so for us, we would run a protocol for the gut microbiome. Is that what you're doing similarly with your clients and patients?
I mean, it's similar. I've got to stay just within my licensure. I'm not treating anything below the neck, but we do things that are supportive. So anything that's going to support the health of the oral microbiome will then also support the gut microbiome. So yes, we might put patients on a protocol where we may need to do a stronger mouthwash for a couple of weeks to knock some of those bacteria levels down and then reseed with some good oral specific probiotics, different than the gut probiotics that you want to last down into your gut. So yes, we will take them on a protocol, and then we value our partnerships with naturopathic practitioners so much. We can do all of the magic in the mouth, but if the rest of their gut is kind of a wreck and I can't do anything about it other than tell them, how to change their diet, I can tell them that. But those like truly functional labs and functional testing and being able to get to some of these different root causes, I need people like you. I need our health coaches, our functional nutritionists, our functional medicine docs. We need all those people working together to make sure we can achieve the most healthy terrain for each patient.
It's exactly like, we can't treat anything that a dentist would. So we love referring out to practitioners like yourself and doctors like yourself that are able to go after the things we're like, hey, we think this might be going on. You need to go and see somebody
Exactly.
that can do this.
Exactly. Yes, 100%.
Oh, such a fun talk. Now, aside from the oral microbiome, let's talk digestion, because I think a lot of people don't realize that digestion actually begins in your mouth.
It does. And depending on what you're eating, you may do a lot more of it in your mouth. So these simple carbohydrates like breads and crackers and things that aren't necessarily sugary, just simple carbohydrates, they are broken down completely by the oral bacteria that's in your mouth and by the salivary enzymes in your mouth. And so it will be glucose before you even swallow it. Some of these other things like the salivary enzymes are starting to break down. They're really just getting things ready for the next stage in digestion. Your pH is going to decrease some, but it's not going to be nearly as acidic as the pH in your stomach. It's like the precursors. It's getting everything ready so that then the stomach can do its job and break them down even more for the small intestine, and then the small intestine even more. So all of that starts right in the mouth as soon as you start chewing.
So not just that, what I do spend time is actually, that's what I say. I say exactly how that smoothie looks. I need you to, before you swallow, I don't need your meat at 134 count, and I don't need your carrot at 63 count, because that is a whole mission on its own. So if we're chewing into a paste-like consistency, we're allowing now the amylase, which is going to break down our carbohydrates, or linguinal lipase that kind of starts that fat for us. But we heavily need to rely, when we're looking at mastication, so fancy for chewing, we need to heavily rely on the accessory organs. That's the teeth, the tongue, and the salivary. If you are chewing something and you can't even create enough saliva, your body's already saying, not for me, not for me. If you're going for water, now, you talked about the pH, now we're diluting, again, further that pH when we're trying to keep it a little bit, I would say, more mildly acidic. We don't want it as acidic either. Your esophagus, you're going to feel that one, right? Because by the time the bolus, which that's a fancy word, I don't know why we have so many words, but by the time bolus hits the stomach, it goes down, and we need that. So All of these cofactors, that's basic. Don't drink with eating, chew, sit, chill. And we don't sit and chill well. Because I'll tell you right now, if I say chill and relax, I'm preparing for a fight on those two words alone, right? Because we don't like to be told, because like you said, I wasn't listening. Well, you were not trained to listen. You were trained to push, because in our today's society, in order to be the best of the best, you have to work harder. You have to be better. It's just all of this conglomerate. And then add in smoking, let's not, but add in smoking, add in anything that goes in this oral cavity, and bam. It's just think about the microbiome. We're exchanging. So as much work as you want to do, I always say your partners, you know what? You don't have to change them. Just buy the toothpaste and change it up for them. We're just starting. We're starting their journey, right?
I tell patients all the time that cavities are contagious. Gum disease is contagious. There are enough other factors that we don't call it a communicable disease. But 100%, that oral microbiome, you are going to share that with the people in your household. So anybody you're sharing cups with or utensils, anybody you're smooching on, it is so transmissible.
This is true, though. I don't want people to underestimate that, right? So, what happens if we have the HSV1? So, if we have cold sores and herpes, we know that's contagious. So, we back away. We're like, oh, wow, what? We don't want to do that. But exactly, if there's oral hygiene, or if somebody has breath and it even has more acidic like or sweet, because that's going into disease and these types of things.
But I do want to ask something on the autoimmune conditions, because this is another thing that I wouldn't say is very commonplace in the dental field. And that's how different dental materials and procedures can worsen autoimmune conditions.
Yeah, anything that's going to create inflammation is going to contribute to that disease process. And so if you've got an autoimmune condition, then that's your weak link. And so anything inflammatory, that's where it's going to tend to show up. Some people get headaches, some people get autoimmune flares, some people get bleeding gums. It Everybody's got their own weak link, or two or three. And that's just a huge one. So yeah, anything that's going to cause inflammation will contribute to autoimmune flares for sure.
And no one's ever told that. It's not like you're getting diagnosed at your doctor and they're like, hey, and by the way, you need to consider this when you're dealing with an autoimmune.
For sure, for sure. But I'll have functional medicine doctors. Thankfully, we've got functional medicine doctors who will tell their patients, like, "Hey, I don't want you, like a Hashimoto's patient." They'll say, "Please don't ever use fluoride because fluoride competes with iodine in the thyroid." And so we want to make sure that we're avoiding that, pulling that out of our practices. And for some people, if they are new to the holistic world or the functional medicine world, they're like, "What the heck do I do?" My dentist said I was going to get a million cavities if I stop using fluoride. Well, secret, you won't. You won't. We just need to make sure things are balanced. But yeah, it's huge, and it's been a really underappreciated area of healthcare. That sadly, I think there are so many more of us struggling with autoimmune conditions now that healthcare is being forced to look elsewhere, because otherwise our options are just Remicade and biologics, and nobody wants to do that if they don't have to.
I actually just got an email from my kid's school yesterday saying that just a reminder, it's time for the kindergarten's fluoride varnishing. And I was like, thankfully, they said you have to sign a form in order for it to happen. I was like, well, I ain't signing any form. So now that we've touched on the fluoride, can we really break down, like, why are we starting to move away from fluoride? What do we need to know about the community fluoridation? Because, like, we've been having fluoride in our water forever. And what are the alternatives that we should be looking for instead of the fluoride? Like, how do we break up with it?
How do we break up with it? So water fluoridation really started like World War II era. So before most of us were born. Um, and it's because they saw this correlation in communities that had higher naturally occurring levels of fluoride in their water. They noticed that those people had fewer cavities and fewer dental issues naturally. So they're like, hey, why don't we bottle this up? Well, what they did is they're not able to add naturally occurring fluoride to everyone's water because that would take too much harvesting and it would be incredibly expensive. But the fertilizer industry, there were certain agricultural products that created this fluorosilicic acid as a byproduct, as a waste product. It's highly caustic, so they had to be careful with how they dumped it. And so this fluorosilicic acid became the source of fluoride for this experiment in fluoridating community water supplies. What's interesting, and this tracks other advances in healthcare as well, but what they noticed was that the level of decay started to drastically decline with the invention of water fluoridation. What they didn't look at until many years later was the rate of tooth decay in other countries that did not fluoridate their water also declined at the same rate. So that's kind of the evolution of it. So, man, fluoride is a tool. It's a tool that can decrease the rate of tooth decay. That's what it is. Um, we were oversold on the benefits of it. Really, we were oversold. And we were also underappreciating the risk because the unintended consequences are that when it's added to the water, you can't control who's getting it and the dose they're getting. So, if you're a 70-year-old dude who weighs 200 pounds and you're healthy and you're drinking 1 or 2 glasses of water a day, that the dose that you're getting, the parts per million per kilogram of body weight, is completely different than an infant who's in an area where breastfeeding's not an option for mom, and that infant who's 10 pounds is getting formula mixed with tap water, and that's their complete diet. Completely different dosages. And so what they found in the States, they did the National Toxicology Program came up with this meta-analysis, and it actually was blocked for several years. But finally a judge made them release it. And in this report, they determined that we actually don't know what the safe level of fluoride is yet. We have no idea. What more and more studies are finding, again, it's hard to get these studies done in the States, but what more and more of these studies are finding is that areas that have an increased level of fluoride in the water supply, if mom has an increased level of fluoride, that kiddos have a lower IQ. And this is not like tinfoil hat conspiracy stuff anymore. Like, this is actually good science that's showing this. For one, it makes me angry because just water fluoridation in general goes against the ethics that they taught me. They taught me that medication without consent is not good, that was not what we were to do, and to first do no harm. So water fluoridation violates those things in a very deep way. And not only that, it's violating it and potentially impacting our children and our children's IQ. That's huge, huge, huge. So for me, we just had to draw a line in the sand. Like, yes, fluoride is a tool. When you can control the dose and you know what dose is safe and what's helpful, then yeah, maybe you can use it as a tool. But because we can't control the dose, patients are exposed all over the place. Like any kind of processed food that you're eating is going to have fluoride in it because there's tap water somewhere in the manufacturing process. So I've just said no fluoride, not ever. We're going to filter it out of the water as best we can, and we're just not going to use it in my practice. So then we need other tools, right? We've got to have something because cavities aren't going away anytime soon because of the diet and the way that we live and our gut health issues. We're not absorbing minerals correctly. We need other tools. So thankfully, there are some other tools, some ingredients that are very, very promising. And two of my favorites are the plant-based sweetener xylitol and calcium hydroxyapatite. When you look at the research, the safety profile is insanely good. Insanely good. Hydroxyapatite has been used in Japan for over 40 years. There have been found no adverse effects at all. Um, right now, science is kind of debating, and especially in the holistic world, they're kind of debating different particle sizes and safety of the different types of hydroxyapatite. That's great. I love the discussion, and I'm hoping that stimulates more and more science being done, but so safe and very good levels of success that can be as good or not, if not better than fluoride. So we've got a couple of tools that we can use so that you don't feel like you need to use fluoride, even if things are out of balance and you've got cavities.
So what would be, in your opinion, like if you could have every person on earth have like this, I guess it's individualized, but if you could have a standardized way where like they're using this mouthwash, they're using this type of toothpaste, like what would be that ideal routine?
So, ideal routine for normal, healthy-ish people, I would say I do still like a twice a day routine. So, something in the morning, something at night. Um, brushing, like we do want to disrupt the biofilm, just like you want people to wash their face. I want people to brush their teeth. We want to decrease the biofilm so that it can't really take a hold. So I like an electric toothbrush personally. They do tend to do a much better job at reducing plaque on the teeth. A rinse, I only use mouthwash strategically and temporarily. So I would say for most people, most of the time, no mouthwash. Or if you just are used to it and you crave it, then let's do something really mild, like something you get at the health food store without a ton of weird ingredients, absolutely no alcohol. It could be literally as simple as salt water. And then I want you to do something in between your teeth. If that's floss, amazing, great. Please use floss. That is very well studied, and your dental hygienist will be so, so happy. Um, I am a realist, and I know that's not practical for every single person. So, something in between your teeth. If it's the thing with the sticks, if it's a water pick that you use in between your teeth, there are even some like interdental stimulators, like these. They're basically like a blunted toothpick. Don't use a real toothpick; those are dangerous. But something just to remove plaque from in between your teeth is really helpful. And that's it. It doesn't take a super long time. Things may be out of balance for a little bit, but they'll get back into balance really easily with a pretty simple routine. Super clean mouthwash, or none at all. Super clean toothpaste, something with xylitol. If we're trying to be fancy and we're really trying to rebalance things, then an oral probiotic.
I love that. It's simple, it's doable, and it's really going to help the overall health of your mouth. And I do have another question, one that I've been asked a few times is, well, if someone is prone to cavities, what should they be focusing on?
Gut health, for one, nutrition and gut health. So, diet wise, I really, really, really want people to focus on healthy proteins and healthy fats. So, good, clean food, the fat soluble vitamins are the ones that are most important for tooth health. I personally like animal based proteins and fats. If there are ethical issues and you're vegan, then you can do it. You just have to be more intentional with it to make sure you're not also getting some of the inflammatory plant-based compounds. It's got to start with diet and nutrition and gut health for sure. But then after that, our remineralizing protocols for people with cavities is xylitol 5 times a day. So whatever xylitol product you like, and it's a hydroxyapatite remineralizing toothpaste.
I know people are going to come back and, because we call it the fluoride debate, but dietary fluoride, it's absorbed rapidly in the stomach and the small intestines. So 1/4 to 1/3 of it's going to be absorbed. The fluoride is going to uptake into the calcified tissues. This is an issue, everybody. Whereas most can go through the urine. Now, I am more on the calcium, the fluorohydroxyapatite. That pathway, I do support. That research 100% I'm down because your teeth naturally have calcium and we fluorinate, we actually displace it because in the industrial area we're not using calcium fluoride, we're using sodium fluoride, two different chemical compounds at this point. So when we do that, that's going to displace the calcium phosphate, and that's going to then decrease the enamel. So it's not that we've just decided, oh my gosh, we just hate fluoride. No, we've done the research. We understand what it does into the body.
There's really good data. Like if you need to have, if you're thinking, oh, maybe Chris and maybe these chicks are right. Maybe they're onto something, but my husband thinks otherwise or my dentist thinks otherwise. Fluoridealert.org is a great resource and has a ton of these facts, and the study, like, it brings receipts.
I drive an hour and 15 minutes to take my kids to a dentist and myself. And they're like, hey, do you want us to mineralize their teeth? And I said, what are you using? And they're like, oh, I'm going to do xylitol. They're like, oh, don't worry. We don't use fluoride here. And I said, that's cool. I said, just thinking outside the box, walk me through this. I said, xylitol is a sugar alcohol. And in order to break down that, we have to have the proper enzymes and or not a lot of inflammation and or. So it still replicates inflammation in the body if the body can't break it down. And she stepped back and she looked at me and she goes, that is so accurate. And I was just like, okay, you are my people. I will be back. Stop asking you to do x-rays every other year because my max is 3. I don't care if they're falling out. But it was that. And that's just, so that's kind of, and I also teach this kind of stuff, right? So I'm just like, I know we're boasting it, but even with stevia, when that came out and I said, and I'm walking down the aisle and I looked and I went, stevia, white, plant, green. This doesn't make sense. And I said, watch out. We're going to see the cascade here. It's looking at non-sugar, these types of things. But now I'm starting to see inflammation in the mouth and gut dysbiosis. And now what's happened in the last 2 years, they've been able to substantiate that with gut dysbiosis. So it's not that it's controversial. It's just more of our bodies, we just have to be so resilient at understanding it. It's not, you don't run off your xylitol, like listen to the dentist. I'm not the expert. I'm just thinking, I wonder what research we're going to see in the next 5 years because we are not of a healthy population. We're not even 50% healthy population. So it's not controversial by say, like, I don't like it. Because we can also use things like mastica gum and acacia fibers and these types of things in order to remineralize, right? We can, take a drop of tea tree oil and swish it around if we feel like we need more of a therapeutic level of something. Like, it doesn't have to, like you said, it doesn't have to be rigorous. It has to be consistent. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the xylitol is I'm just like, what are you thinking about that?
What I've been taught, what the literature shows about how xylitol works is some of it, to some extent, is produced naturally in the body. That's why there was that controversial study about heart attacks that I thought you were going to mention. But xylitol, the reason some of the naturopaths will tell their patients to avoid it is a very strong, effective prebiotic. And so if you're ingesting a lot of xylitol, it can't, especially if your gut's already way out of whack, then it can create some gastric distress. And that can be in the form of really fun, explosive diarrhea. By the way, like, we work with our patients with that, if that is the case for them. If they are one of those, like the 1%ers who are just so sensitive, they can't even do it topically. It works primarily on 2 different ways in the mouth. So it will raise the pH of the saliva really quickly. So that has a nice immediate benefit. But then in the long term, it's similar enough in structure to sugar that because it's a sugar alcohol, like you said, that the cavity causing bacteria will ingest it. They'll eat it, but they can't use it. They can't metabolize it. So those bad bacteria will wind up just kind of slipping off the teeth, and you'll get this shift in the microbiome over time. A shift, by the way, which you see not just in the mouth, but if you use xylitol as a nasal spray, kiddos get fewer ear infections and you have fewer sinus issues. Also, if you're using it nasally. So it has that microbiome shift. But it, like, help me understand, you're thinking that because it is a sugar alcohol that requires a digestive process, that it could be an inflammatory trigger in some people.
We shouldn't be consuming it in copious amounts. In fact, you're supposed to be spitting it out. But again, our skin, any orifice, is going to be a quick digestion tool, right? these types of things. This is why I don't even like people eating for at least 15 minutes after they brush their teeth. And they're like, why? And I'm like, well, because, you just got to chill. But as soon as we ingest anything, no matter what, those sugar bugs, quote unquote, what we call them, they're already working. You're going to already start to get that formation. But that's what I'm saying. It's that dysbiosis, that the gas, that bloat, that prebiotic. Same with when they put fructooleosaccharides in probiotics. Oh, you better believe you're going to be walking around 4 months pregnant, right? For most cases. So it was more like that. And I said, that's where the research I think is going to be neat, because when we find anything that's good, oh, guess what we do? We market it and we increase levels of things.
You're so right.
And
We do with everything. Yes.
we do. It's like, right? And then it's not going to be good. So anyways, long story short is that's just the kind of the thing I just wanted to bring up. If you're starting to get gas and bloat, it could be the sugar alcohol. We might need to break that down. We might need to step back a little bit. So it's like these small things. So anyways, I just thank you for allowing me that room in order to just kind of like massage that out, because it wasn't for the controversy. It's more of I wonder what we're going to see in 5 years, what they're going to say about this. Yeah.
No, that'll be so interesting. I agree.
All right. So this was a jam-packed episode. You can tell we really loved the topic because we got all of our questions in. So Dr. Toni, if people want to come check you out, where can they learn more?
The website to my practice is www.flourish.dental. And we would love to have anybody who wants to come down to Dallas. We've got lots of people who travel, who fly in. So happy to see you there. Online, I try to do a ton of educational content online. So you can find me on YouTube at Your Holistic Dentist, or Instagram is probably my busiest channel. And that's just my name, at Dr. Toni Engram.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Another fun-filled episode here on Keep It Clear. We hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.